Welcome back to Weekly Briefing. Joining me in studio is Nicole Neily, president of Parents Defending Education, Neil McCabe, national political editor for the Star News Network, and Alicia Powell, investigative journalist for the Gateway Pundit. The left continues to throw its temper tantrum over Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk buying out Twitter. Musk put $44 billion on the line for freedom of speech. Twitter's top lawyer, Vijay Gadde, cried during an internal meeting about Musk's takeover, fretting over the direction of the company's future. Nikki, we just spoke to the Getter CEO, Jason Miller. This is the lead competitor for Twitter, and he believes that Twitter is beyond salvation. It is just so inundated with people who are not freedom speech minded.
Right. Well, I think it's a totally valid concern. You know, we have talked about the deep state, and think about all of these people who have been Twitter employees that really don't believe in free speech, right? I mean, it's very much a free speech for me, but not for thee. So the silencing, the censoring, the shadow banning. And so, yeah, I think, you know, what do you do? Do you clean house? I mean, what do you, I mean, they have already had to put in place the protocols so that the engineers are not able to screw things up on their way out, which is very scary. I mean, that's a lot of money to spend in something that might be sabotaged by your very employees.
I mean, if you were Elon Musk, what are some of the things that you would do to help try and address this problem of the core team being so anti-free speech, if you will?
First of all, eliminate banning. In fact, I spoke with someone named Jason Shurka, the founder and CEO of this new social media platform called Unified, and he had a great idea. If there's information that we think should be banned or it's sensitive, if Al-Qaeda is on there, have a poll, have the people vote it out, whether or not it should be.
Oh, interesting. Democratizing.
Yeah, but we should eliminate banning from the top. You know, this is ridiculous. We have a sitting president banned, and we still continue to use Twitter, so it's not going anywhere, and it can't get any worse than that.
So, in the meantime, former President Trump's Truth Social shot up to the top ranks for on the Apple Store, and it ended up trending for a while. Why do you think that is the case? It seems like with news of Elon Musk taking over Twitter, there was all this hope, and people were coming back to Twitter. Why is Truth Social suddenly shooting through the ranks?
I think what's going on with Truth Social is that now that they've got this alliance or merger with Rumble, they have the servers and the sort of the back office machinery to actually run their platform to the size and scale that they want. They have a waiting list of like more than 1 million people, and they're trying to work through that, and they couldn't really do that because they didn't have the organic servers, and they didn't want to be in a situation like Parler, where one day, you know, Parler was using Amazon servers,
right.
and one day somebody just pulls the switch on them and they're out of business. And so that's part of the sort of the ramp up. They say, you know, the libertarians always say, well, then don't complain about Google, build your own Google. Well, that costs money. Truth Social is working that through. Trump has said that he will now start posting on Truth Social. I think he's posted maybe once. And that I assume is going to change.
Yeah,
we'll see.
You know what's amazing is that you just mentioned Amazon Cloud Services. There is mutterings that if Elon Musk does take over Twitter completely and the left deems it as a platform that's promoting hate speech, even Amazon said that they're going to take Twitter off of its servers.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. I mean, we see Republicans, conservative organizations all the time kicked off these servers, right? I mean, watching how Salesforce got rid of a bunch of clients. This is a very real concern. We were actually canceled by our email provider, Campaign Monitor, a few weeks ago.
For the crime of?
For the crime of advocating for parents and civil rights. How dare we? And so, you know, it's a very real concern for people. And so I'm glad to see Truth Social thriving, Getter. You know, this is what Justice Brandeis said many years ago. The answer is more speech, not less speech. And the fact that so many Twitter employees and progressives are freaking out about this shows you never cared about this in the first place. You only wanted to promote your views and keep us silent. And this is coming to bite you, and you deserve it.
Certainly a lot more going on under the surface, indeed. Project Veritas released the audio from an internal all-hands-on-deck call where CEO Parag Agrawal and other top officials fielded questions from the staff. Listen.
Elon made it clear in public that a large part of the reason he bought the platform was because of our moderation policies and disagreements in how we deal with health. This puts Twitter service and trust and safety, as well as anybody who cares about health on the platform, in a very difficult position.
I will turn to a former PV alum, Alicia. That was CMO Leslie Berland. That remark obviously is a window into the internal mindset of Twitter at this moment.
Well, let's see. We see this contrived effort to institute globalism that's being carried. Big tech plays a major role in this, and the limitations on getting information out there that's critical to the American public, to people around the world regarding COVID-19 and vaccines. I mean, these health. It's actually anti-health. It's like this depopulation effort.
Right.
That we see, you know, everything from, if you can't, I can't write about an article on the Gateway Pundit and find it in the search engine after. And of course, Gateway Pundit's banned from Twitter. And if you post anything on Facebook, you get a whole fact checkers along the way. And what are we talking about here? If you take these vaccines, they're not vaccines. They're gene modification shots, right?
Yes. We're seeing this conflation of free speech being mixed up with, oh, we're suppressing certain kinds of speech on behalf of safety, right, on the health aspects of the world. Yeah. And these are technology experts that are suddenly medical experts.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, you know, I was also at Project Veritas.
Yes,
and,
two PV alums here.
And my good friend James O'Keefe would always talk to me about how, you know, the main mission of Project Veritas was to expose the private truth behind the public lie. And so one of the great things we see in this report is these people talking amongst themselves about what is really going on. And you have to remember, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, well, Project Veritas is the one that told us there was shadow banning. There was a whole operation on Twitter.
Right.
And all of this, nobody really knew what was going on until Project Veritas blew the lid off of what was going on in Twitter. And I think you can credit this movement of Musk to actually buying Twitter probably started with James O'Keefe.
You think they're running around burning documents, shredding the, you know, smoke coming out of the factory in San Francisco?
You know, feign that we're doing this in the name of safety. I mean, I think years ago when we used to hear the phrase speech is violence, right? That was the justification why I could go punch you on a college campus because you said something that hurt my feelings. Raise my stress levels, stress is bad, stress kills, leads to heart attacks. And then during all the George Floyd stuff, that turned into silence is violence. And so not only could you just not keep your mouth shut if you didn't agree with somebody, you had to parrot their talking points, right? And so their word shift, right, this kind of like language creep is horrifying because at the end of the day, what is safety? You're defining what's safe. And you know what? I don't trust you guys because you were ostensibly the experts on all these things, and look how wrong you were proven on issue after issue after issue. That's why, I mean, the content moderation, yeah, we have concerns because you have failed, and we've seen you fail.
Well, and with regards to health, I mean, first of all, what we learned from COVID and all the censorship on social media and just everything for the last 3 years should be a wake-up call to everyone to stop putting your faith in these systems and stop trusting. Why do we trust Elon Musk? Have you done an investigative like sweep scope and really digged into Elon Musk? Because if we're regarding health, I mean, he's also a part of this transhumanism agenda, and his Neuralink company creates brain chips that he intends to put in all of us if he gets his way. But because he tweets out a meme from 3 weeks ago with Bill Gates or says something that kind of, you know, pop culture likes, and he's been on with Joe Rogan smoking weed, oh, Elon Musk is so great. But we don't really know anything about this man, because if you do a deep dive into him, his past is not very clean, and he's also getting lots of money from DARPA.
It's also weird that Jack Dorsey, as the board was sort of going back and forth with Musk, Jack Dorsey's saying, hey, this board of directors, like they're crazy, and there are like these coups and counter coups, and it's the board that's sort of running this company into the ground, and Dorsey's actually endorsing Musk. Well, Dorsey was the guy who started all this censoring and shadow banning.
That is a little bit confusing. And to that point, former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey weighed in on Musk's move, saying that while Twitter is the closest thing he has seen toward having a global consciousness, Twitter, the company, is his, quote, biggest regret. Where is
Well, it's
Where
a
are
grant.
all these players
He's going to
here?
get
What's going
almost
on?
$1 billion in this
he's
when he
laughing
gets
all the way to
cashed
the
out.
bank, yeah.
So,
Oh, what
you
a
know,
regret, right?
Well, maybe we'll pass the basket for Jack Dorsey.
When we come back from the break, we discuss a Chinese communist policy which is inching closer and closer to home. Should you be worried? When we return. The Biden administration this week announced it is forming a disinformation board to crack down on fake news ahead of the midterm elections. Listen.
We have just established a Mis- and Disinformation Governance Board in the Department of Homeland Security to more effectively combat this threat, not only to election security, but to our homeland security.
Neil, the woman who is now going to be the truth czar is this woman named Nina Jankowicz, and she used to be the Russian disinformation expert. Tell us about her.
Well, she's one of the ones who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. And so, I mean, that enough should be a problem, ringing bells. I think that what's really a problem here is that the United States used to be this marketplace of ideas, right? So when, during the Reagan years and conservatives were in the ascendancy, conservatives were basically saying, hey, we're not trying to force our ideas on you, but we think our ideas compete, and we're happy with that. That marketplace of ideas is something the left used to be interested in, not anymore. And so now it's just one truth. It's like, back in the day, Galileo got in trouble because, you were supposed to submit your book to the church, and the church would check all your facts and figures, and they'd say, okay, this is true, and you can publish this book. Galileo published a book without the church's approval. And so that led to problems.
Is this a sign that we're going backwards as a civilization?
We have a sitting president of the United States who is sitting there without the people's approval. I mean, and then this information, the fact that Joe Biden's in the White House is a whole disinformation. I mean, it's
a daily disinformation campaign.
I wonder what the polls, what Biden's support really is amongst the American public. It's probably like 10% of America supports this illegitimate
the phrase du
president.
jour now, right?
So
I mean,
the whole point is we don't have election integrity, so they have to continue this disinformation policing so they can keep it that way.
Everybody made fun of President Trump when he talked about fake news back in the day, right? But now the phrase du jour is disinformation, right? Last week or 2 weeks ago, The Atlantic and the University of Chicago had a whole forum on disinformation. And who do they have speak at it? President Obama, right? Who won PolitiFact's Lie of the Year for if you like your health insurance, you can keep it, right? I mean, so that's where they're moving to, because the gatekeepers don't like that their ideas actually can't compete in the marketplace of ideas. When it is put to the American people, they hate it. They don't like it. They don't vote for it. And so we have to control what people have. That's why we get the Twitter issue.
And the fact checkers are all corrupt.
Totally.
Every single one of them. And it's like, it doesn't matter which one you're dealing with. They're all supported by Soros or Soros linked or somehow left-wing linked. And, we would, going back to Project Veritas, we would deal this all the time because there would be some left-wing Soros-funded fact-checking organization that would review our reports. They would say it's all bogus, and then that would be the excuse that Facebook and everybody else could use.
Censor.
Now we can shut it down.
And the other thing too is that the people who are on the boards of these companies that own these fact-checking organizations, you can see a Venn diagram how they coalesce with the people who run the algorithms on Google, on some of our major search engines. So they end up fixing the algorithms so that you've got different stories.
And they verify stories that are demonstrably false or unproven. For instance, when President Trump, they said that President Trump called the soldiers buried in France losers. Why do I want to go to these losers? That was never proven. Like, the Associated Press verified that story. but they didn't have a source either. Like, no, it never happened, yet everyone fact-checked it as true.
And look at how it's so much more difficult to be a journalist now than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Before now, the Google search engine is completely rigged. If you type in vaccine injury, for example, you're not going to see this. You have to go to the website's search engine to find all the stuff about vaccine deaths or VAERS or spike proteins. And so if they weren't successfully censoring information in an unprecedented fashion, because we've never had this much technology, we wouldn't see people wearing masks and going and getting compulsory vaccines. That's going to probably, you know, take their lives, God forbid, causing strokes and myocarditis. They're reliant on people not getting access to this information so they can continue this sham, this manufactured pandemic.
Right. Censorship through filtration. The Italian city of Bologna is preparing to launch a social credit score style system, which they are calling the Smart Citizen Wallet. Officials say users of the Smart Citizen's wallet will get digital points for virtuous behavior like recycling. These points can be used for buying things. Alicia, how excited are you about a social credit scoring system?
Look at what's happening in China. I mean,
they started it, essentially.
Well, it's on its way here. I mean, what we've already experienced, needing a vaccine passport. The next thing is they want the chip in your arm or the chip in your brain that Elon Musk is manufacturing with DARPA. It's on its way here. And what's to stop it if we do not have election integrity? So far, after we have the World Economic Forum pouring in, and after what happened in 2020, what's being fixed? We saw voting machines. If they want, the powers that be want to manufacture or roll out another pandemic and have mail-in ballots, then here we are. We're going to have to get that chip in the arm to participate into society.
No, it's a great point. I mean, it's the point that politics matter. You meet people all the time who say, oh, I'm not into politics, I don't really care. But when you look at a story like this, you're right.
Politics cares about you. No, and it is, you know, right now, Italy is saying, Bologna is saying, this is voluntary, right? But how many programs have we seen over the years that start out as voluntary and then suddenly transition into being mandatory, right? And so I think there is legitimate concern, and the fact that this is in Italy, which, as you alluded to, is in our backyard. I mean, this is not some far-flung, distant location. This is not, you know, Tatooine. This is, I mean, we go to Italy for vacation, right? And so
to Alicia's point, it starts off voluntary, and then it becomes mandatory, just like the vaccines. And
don't downplay the influence of China in Italy. They've already taken over one of the ports.
Yeah.
And you know, the reason why Wuhan was one of the first hotspots outside of China with the Wuhan virus is that there are thousands and thousands of Chinese workers in Italy because the suits are made in Italy. They're just, instead of in China, they just have all the Chinese workers are in Italy. And I would say that, you know, China could be making a play for Italy in a big way right under our nose.
And remember, who defines what virtuous behavior is? Bureaucrats, the government.
Here's the problem, too. You have a significant portion of the American public that's for these things like social credit stores, that wants to get a chip in their arm.
We've been primed with the vaccine,
right? That wants to have COVID camps for us.
Right. No, we've certainly been primed under the guise of this is for society's well-being. A coalition of groups mostly led by parents penned a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona this week. The letter asked Cardona to not rewrite Title IX's sex discrimination rules. Nikki, this is your domain. This is something that this is your baby here. What's going on here? Why are parents so passionate about this?
Sure. So Title IX prevents discrimination on the basis of sex in education, right? That's something we should all be in favor of. In 2020, President Trump and Betsy DeVos rewrote, they put in place a lot of safeguards, rolling back a lot of the Obama-era overreach on these policies. And so they protected free speech, which the Obama administration had encouraged them to trample on. They put in place due process protections. I mean, people used to refer to campus rape tribunals as kangaroo courts because they were so biased. There was no oversight. And so in 2020, President Trump and Secretary DeVos put a lot of great rules in place. The Obama people, or the Biden people, have been very clear they want to roll that back. But in addition to rolling back the due process protections, they also want to overlay gender identity into this. They're reading that into the statute, frankly, illegally. And so that's going to be a big problem, because if the president wants to prevent discrimination on the basis of gender identity, then that's something that Congress needs to do. They need to change that statute through the proper process. And then in so doing, it removes the discretion of schools, of individuals, of families to talk about, maybe I don't want to use somebody's pronoun because it goes against my private religious beliefs. Maybe I don't want my child to be in an overnight accommodation on a field trip with a boy who now identifies as a girl.
Yeah,
So
that was my question. How does this translate into kids every day, encountering this? How does this...
Well, first of all, the number of young people, teenagers who now identify as transgender or they're getting going to see transgender counseling is skyrocketed over the past decade.
Why is that?
Because of the propaganda that they're inundating the public with constantly. You can't go to Nickelodeon or Disney and not see a drag queen,
normalizing
fairy
all of this,
godmother, and what does it? And then you have parents who are actually teaching their kids that they're born in the wrong body or that they can choose their gender.
I was
becoming
stunned.
more rampant.
I was stunned how many Hollywood parents have transgender kids.
Yeah, well,
I think it's interesting. The
Illuminati.
Supreme Court, Chevron deference basically gives the executive branch the authority to interpret rules and regulations. And Gorsuch has said that he wants to revisit Chevron deference. And I think when you have a conflict like this, you have a law, and then you have an administration that's reinterpreting or uninterpreting the law.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has to get involved. And I think it might be the end of Chevron deference.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we could go on with this one. This is a very important topic, but that's actually all the time that we have for this panel's take. Thank you all for joining Weekly Briefing. When we